Proud to be a Democrat? Oh, is that American? Well, we could write a new version. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to My State of Mind, which on a Monday after the Giants are now 0-2 and looking like they may never win a ball game again is not very good. But we still have to come to work because the NFL is nothing but a fantasy for us. And as we'll figure out over the course of today's show, and I think all this week, a large social and criminal conversation, it seems to me. Yes, what's it like to be a Democrat in Rhode Island? What does it take? All of that. The subject of tonight's conversation from Phil Isle, the editor of the Providence Phoenix, who wrote a very interesting piece on this a couple of weeks back. And I figure we'll take a break from some of the candidates while we talk about the big picture, at least half of the big picture, but some would say in a one-party state, it might be the whole big picture. Okay, I'm mumbling. Let's move on to the rundown. What do we got tonight? Fellas, keep it up, and you may get exactly what you don't want. We have new polling data, interestingly enough, in the governor's race, and the question of endorsements for gubernatorial candidates may have, I don't know, a little bit of currency involved in it. I'll explain that to you. And it's always so funny how they hate each other until one election and love each other the next. And of course, the NFL is a big problem right now. Well, they got a lot of problems. Let's dig in, then we'll get to Phil Isle, our guest. First item up this evening is, this is a strategy? That's my question as we take a look at the headlines here. Iran won't team with the U.S. against Islamic State. Well, who cares about what Iran will do? Obviously, it's very complicated, and I shouldn't be so nonchalant. But this ISIS team of just evildoers, as old George Bush would say, just won't stop, will they?
An international conference on how to defeat ISIS is getting results, at least on paper. 26 countries, as well as the EU, UN, and Arab League, are declaring they will support Iraq in the fight against the Sunni militant group. The agreement comes after ISIS released a video over the weekend showing the beheading of a British aid worker. This coalition includes Arab countries. Some have indicated they may be open to taking part in airstrikes.
Gee, don't get a nosebleed. That's really exciting and wonderful of you, Arab states. By the way, it is time for us to make sure that the whole Middle East region begins to clean up its own act, as well as our leadership in all of this, which of course has, for the most part, been from behind. But I will tell you, ISIS keeps moving on this strategy of taking the lives of journalists in the most heinous way. The American public will no longer be saying no boots on the ground. And the president won't have to shy away from boots on the ground. And he won't have to telegraph no boots on the ground, because we'll all be demanding boots on the ground. Oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Next item. Yeah, so we got new polling data. So they say, here are the two major candidates for governor, as they say, the Republican Allan Fung and Gina Raimondo. You are so familiar with their faces, right? We've got some new polling data out. I found this to be very, very interesting. This is Public Opinion Strategies, which has been hired by Allan Fung. Keep that in mind. But they make 3 points today in their findings, and they are that Gina and Allan are tied at 42%, with 16% undecided. They say Allan is well liked and well known with 96% name recognition, 96% that is, and 64% like him. In contrast, Gina, damaged goods, they say in their essay, only 54% have a favorable opinion. Well, listen, she's got some turmoil inside the Democratic Party, no doubt. So this was kind of interesting. In the first full week of the sprint toward the general election, the guy who told us during the primary season that he never releases internal polling, that would be Allan Fung, released an internal poll. See, when Block had better numbers, Fung wouldn't recognize him. But that turned out okay. Now Allan Fung's releasing internal numbers. I don't know, karma might get you there, Allan. In the meantime, what might really get you is the third-party candidate, and that is this gentleman, Bob Healey, who's been a guest and shall be again later this week, I believe on Thursday evening. Bob Healey is now the moderate party candidate. Unless there is a successful Board of Elections appeal, which I have no time for tonight, but which we will talk about tomorrow night, because the Republican Party thinks they got an argument that says that Bob Healey should not be in that race. Just another day as we get toward the general. Next item, speaking of general election and endorsements, I always take a peek at newsmakers with Tim White, Ted Nesi, Dan McGowan this time around, Joe Fleming, and Bob Walsh of the National Education Association. And when Tim asked Bob Walsh, the leader of the Clay Pell campaign, de facto and formal head of the Education Association, he said this about endorsements.
Is the NEA going to endorse Gina Raimondo?
Too early to tell, but there are great concerns with Alan Fung. Alan Fung's a right to work, thinks everyone should be in a 401k. I could guess very strongly we're not going to be with Alan Fung. Some of our people are very angry at Gina and will vent that anger.
You know, it's kind of interesting to ask the question, who needs who more, right? Does the teacher union need Gina more, or does Gina need the teacher union more? I don't know. We'll see. But is she willing to do what is rumored to be talked about, and that is this guy? He's back. Clay Pell. Would he be offered a prominent position in the Gina Raimondo administration as potentially the Commissioner of Education, which would be a new position, I think, or head up the board or something like that? Clay Pell and Gina Raimondo don't agree on a lot in education. The press has got to press Gina Raimondo and ask her whether she's open to Clay Pell joining her administration. That's what the NEA will want, and that's what will earn her the endorsement from that organization. Next item, political bedfellows. I always get a kick out of this too, you know. You remember only a week or two ago, these guys were all getting after each other in the mayor's race. Michael Solomon, the city council president, and of course, he's running against Jorge Elorza after he and Brett Smiley, that'd be Elorza and Brett Smiley, joined forces to beat Solomon. Remember all this rhetoric?
We thought this was important to let the public know, and the people of the city of Providence know that I'm the only candidate that could beat Buddy Cianci.
If Mike Solomon becomes the Democratic nominee, then there's a very real chance that Cianci would come back into City Hall, and there is no way that we can allow that to happen.
And we have even tougher rhetoric that we had, right? That Solomon was no different than Cianci, that Solomon was the same kind of guy as Cianci, that Solomon would turn us around in the wrong direction in the old days as well, just like Cianci, that he's just as bad and evil as Cianci. And then you look at the newspaper. Oh, isn't that nice? Michael Solomon and Jorge Elorza palling around together. He's such a classy guy, Elorza says of Solomon. 2 weeks ago, he was near Satan. Now he's an asset to the campaign. Bedfellows, quite the interesting dynamic in politics, don't you think? Jorge Elorza will be here Wednesday night. Yeah, we'll ask him about that, no doubt. And finally, tonight, the NFL is on its heels in a big way. Here's the latest as we try to figure out who's next behaving badly.
The Carolina Panthers' Greg Hardy became the third NFL player benched in a week, just an hour before Sunday's game against the Detroit Lions. The defensive end is appealing a July domestic assault conviction. Minnesota deactivated star running back Adrian Peterson after he was charged with child abuse. Peterson's attorney said his client admitted to spanking his 4-year-old with a branch. On Monday, the NFL indefinitely suspended Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice after a new video emerged showing him punching and knocking out his then-fiancée in an elevator. Violence off the football field was the talk of the day Sunday.
What happens is we teach everybody, tells everybody how to turn it on, but nobody teaches us how to turn it off.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is also under fire for his handling of the Rice situation.
No one teaches them how to turn it off. What a pitiful excuse that is. At least Chris Carter of ESPN said it right when I believe I heard him say this weekend, pull them off the field because they don't respect kids and they don't respect their wives. That's a little bit of honest conversation. But of course the NFL is too big a juggernaut here. They'll get through it. As we showed you Friday night, all those fans from Baltimore wearing those Rice jerseys, including women. I don't know. The NFL has a spell on us. Me too. I'm a Giant fan. I'm down. We're 0-2. But real life has got to matter somewhere along the line, don't you think? All right, when we come back, what's it like to be a Democrat? Phil Isle will kind of explain it. It's kind of weird. Stay with us. So many people complain about the one-party system here in Rhode Island, but we hardly ever look into that one party, but Phil Isle did from the Providence Phoenix. Interesting stuff. Here was the headline a few weeks back. What does it mean to be a Democrat in Rhode Island? I thought perhaps that was a very interesting question, and after reading the piece, I'm not sure I got any kind of more definitive idea, but you certainly gave some flavor from different parties and different angles. Welcome. Nice to have you again.
Thanks for having me back.
Before we get going, why don't we just show you, I think, an important part of what you wrote, showing you, the viewer, of course. Perhaps the most telling thing about being a Democrat, you write, in Rhode Island is that 3 weeks before primary elections, in a ballot year of enormous importance, the uber-dominant party only feels compelled to release a copy of its platform when a reporter asks for it, and that document is 6 years old.
Yeah.
That really, that got you. That got you. Was chicken or the egg? Did you ask for the platform first, had to see it 6 years old, and then say, I'm going to write about this party, or you were writing about the party and asked for the platform and saw that it was 6 years old?
I was just trying to figure out, as I say in the headline, what does it mean to be a Democrat in Rhode Island? And one of the first people I spoke with was Sam Bell, the state coordinator of the Rhode Island Progressive Democrats, I believe is his organization. And just in the course of our conversation, he mentions, something about, well, if I could ever get my hands on a platform, I would X, Y, Z. And I said, wait, you can't get your hands on a platform? And the more I spoke with people, it became this kind of like invisible, mythical document, the Rhode Island State
Yeah, there's a
Party
platform. Sure, there's a platform. Yeah, we got a platform. Anybody got the platform? When's the last time we wrote the platform? Right, that kind of stuff?
Exactly. And just for context's sake, I ultimately went and did just a pretty cursory search of all 50 states just to find, whether we were the only ones. And at the time, to be fair, they have posted a platform since my article came up, albeit one from 2008. So what I'm about to say no longer applies. But at the time I wrote the article, they were the only state in New England that didn't have a current or any platform easily available online. And they were one of only about 10 states nationwide that didn't have a platform.
Yeah, I know that I don't have to explain. Where am I? What camera? There I am. I know I don't have to explain what a platform is. A platform is the stuff you believe in writing, right?
Yeah, it's shared ideas, it's shared goals.
The philosophy of the party, the strategy of the party, that kind of thing. Yes.
Another way. It's customer, it's like putting the ingredients on the side of a food product in a way. So people, all Rhode Islanders are constituents of a lot of Democrats. One of the things I did for this piece was just try to track down exactly how democratic this state is. And it's 89% of our General Assembly. I just heard a new quote from Dan McGowan here at WPRI. Providence hasn't elected a Republican to the city council since 1986. That gives you a sense of the flavor of things in Providence. The entire congressional delegation. So in such a monolithic environment, it can, and perhaps does, mean next to nothing to just say, hey, I'm running for office and I'm a Democrat.
Well, when it seems to me that you would go around and look for some key Democrats. Steve, can we put up Sheldon Whitehouse's perspective on this? That would be the third one on my sheet here, and read this. This is kind of fascinating. Sheldon says about the party. I'm a Democrat because I believe all Americans deserve a fair shot at good life and a good living and a dignified life. For generations, Democrats have fought for that principle and for laws that have helped. Did someone write that for him, or how did that come?
Well, I don't know.
I'm so unmoved by that.
I didn't. It would have been a pretty dry article if I had just taken quotes from candidates and elected officials, and I did take some of those because those are important. Sheldon Whitehouse is a powerful guy. He's a U.S. Senator. We should know what he has to say. Every elected Democrat or Democratic candidate should have some kind of answer to this question.
That was pretty weak, though. There's no vision in it. I mean,
I liked that he pointed to specific legislation: Social Security, Medicare, Pell Grants.
Oh, past the quote, there was more.
No, right here. Oh. Civil rights, gay rights legislation, Pell Grants, Medicare. I mean, oftentimes people won't even point to anything specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Other folks who I was happy to include were folks like Fred Ordonez, Executive Director of DARE, Direct Action for Rights and Equality. They're basically an activism organization. He said, he was very frank, there's absolutely no quality control when it comes to calling yourself a Democrat in Rhode Island. He said, and this is a pretty liberal guy, I actually have in this particular state a little bit more respect for the few Republicans that exist. At least with the Republicans, they're straight up. There isn't as much deceit. So, you know, I tried to mix it up with the people who were giving more soundbite type safe stuff and some people who were really kind of telling it as it is.
Well, I think your work might give them a little bit of a soul surge. I thought Republican consultant Kara Cromwell probably said it best when I wrote this. When I read this piece, I thought this was really good. The Democratic Party in Rhode Island is similar to what occurs when a couple of people from huge families get married. You have aunts, uncles, cousins who all share the same family names but have very little else in common. I think what she's saying is, it's just culture.
Yeah.
Right? Around here, it's just culture to be a Democrat in many ways.
Yeah, and as a journalist, I mean, I'm not going to get all high on my soapbox here. I just wanted to get some answers. The results we have, I think the strongest point that Republicans in the state have is when they say, listen, you guys have been in control for 7 some odd decades, and what are the results? You know, we're near the bottom in unemployment, 38 studios, which was a bipartisan scandal, happened. Certainly, you know, high-profile Democrats resigning in the last year, as I say in the article. The resignations of Gordon Fox and David Caprio, who was the head of the state party, were far louder than any legislative achievement this year. In this environment, we should constantly be asking, what does it mean to be a Democrat? Which in Rhode Island almost is the same as asking, what does it mean to be an elected official?
Well, it's kind of funny because when we come back, we'll talk about it, because there have been many times on the radio phone lines when I've said, don't even bother trying to hurt your brain. Stay with us. Phil Isle is my guest. He's the editor of the Providence Phoenix. The question is, what does it mean to be a Democrat? It's a fascinating question. You know, sometimes on the radio I'll tell people, listen, because that tent is so large and because the Republicans have so little impact on the legislature, don't get yourself in a lather over choosing Republicans, or worrying about Republicans' return to glory if they've ever had any. Just know that because Democrats are diverse, you got to find the smartest person for your issues who may just well be a Democrat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that brings up, I want to read another quote from David Siegel, who's a former state rep and former Green Party member of the Providence City Council. He told me the state would pass more progressive legislation if, say, the 25% of Dems in the House and Senate who are the most conservative were Republicans instead, even if the same exact people holding the same exact beliefs were still in office. But because they're Democrats, the leadership feels obligated to consider their opinions, and that pulls the whole Democratic caucus to the right. So I think in general, as you say, even if you're not a registered D Democrat, everyone ought to care what it means to be a Democrat in this state, because as various people told me, and as I think a lot of evidence shows, you can kind of get away with a lot of things as a Democrat.
Pretty deep. The chairman of the Republican Party, Mark Smiley, said this: the preponderance of Democrats at all levels of government has manifested itself as there being little to no oversight, since there are so few Republicans that we have to rely on law enforcement agencies to watch over our government. That's how we get midday raids on the speakers of the House, blah, 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 blah. You know what? All due respect to Mr. Smiley, his opinion doesn't matter. Well, it really doesn't to me. I mean, until they figure out what it's like to be a Republican in this state, define themselves and have and provide people with a choice that makes clear, consistent sense, he shouldn't be talking.
To their credit, they've got a platform.
Whatever.
Well,
and who can cite it?
You mean who actually knows what it says?
Yes.
That's a different article, but at least they have one that they ratified in 2014. Let me just read you a quick quote from the platform that's on the Democrats' current website. It says, under continued welfare reform, during the Clinton administration, Democrats have worked to dramatically transform the welfare system. This is allegedly from 2008, and they're talking about the Clinton administration, what it sounds like to me in the present tense. So when is this really from?
I don't know. Who knows?
And just to add a little bit of irony, one of the things in what we stand for, they say, we shall continue our efforts to foster the type of government that is responsive to the needs of the Rhode Island citizen. Not responsive enough, I guess, to have a document of your values updated in, I don't know.
Clearly, this has been bothering you. But here's the funny question. Will we get a Democrat as governor? We haven't had one in a long time.
Well, if you believe the Fung campaign, it's neck and neck.
Dead heat.
Imagine that.
He doesn't give you internal numbers unless he thinks.
Did they release any methodology or anything like that?
No.
They
Like,
don't do that.
how did you ask that question, Alan? Well, that's not important. You think they would release the poll itself versus just the summary of the poll, but that's a whole other conversation.
To your question, will we get a Democrat? I don't often venture into predictions, but it certainly seems like Ms. Raimondo, Treasurer Raimondo, has a lot of momentum.
No doubt. Thought on the Providence mayoral race while I got you? You were at Buddy's press conference the other day.
I was at his press conference.
Isn't it funny how bedfellows are made, though? Solomon was evil junior, and now he's the best asset Jorge Elorza can have.
I tweeted about the photo you showed because it was a brilliant photo. It's got Solomon and Elorza and then the signs for Buddy looming
in the back.
There was some kind of buzz on Twitter about, I don't know whether I'll do a story on this, whether Buddy's campaign is breaking the size limitations for signs. He's got this huge, like, movie screen size signs.
Are there zoning laws that regulate that?
Yeah. Apparently, according to what I've read, I
can't imagine.
Double check this. Political signs can't exceed 16 square feet. I'm going to get out with my tape measure and get on the phone. Maybe that'll be our next conversation.
What's it mean to be a Democrat? You tell us on Your State of Mind. Phil, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your State of Mind next. We love hearing what you think. You know how to get in touch. Your State of Mind. Just call us at 228-1886. Email us at stateofmind@myritv.com. Tweet, Facebook post. Here's a voicemail sent to us.
I don't know why we want Buddy back in the office. Once a felon, always a felon. Please do not vote this man back in. He's in the past. He's done a lot of bad things to the state. He should not be elected again.
Well, Ron from Woonsocket, passionate. He can't vote, but he can cheerlead. It just goes to show, as Providence goes, so goes Rhode Island. Dan McKee, Democrat Lieutenant Governor, tomorrow. See you on the radio at noon on WPRO. Good night.